My father cut me out of the family business the same day I signed the deed to the land that controls his resort's only water source. So when his desert empire started drying up, he came crawling back. But by then, I'd already turned off the tap. Look, I know what you're thinking. What kind of daughter does that to her own father? Well, stick around, because by the time I'm done telling you this story, you'll understand why sometimes the only way to save your soul is to burn down everything that tried to destroy it. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Desert, city, oceanside, doesn't matter. I bet my story will make you think twice about crossing your own blood. Now let's jump into how I brought my father's empire to its knees with nothing but a pen, a deed, and the one thing money can't buy: water rights. 3 years ago, I sat in my father's boardroom wearing the Armani suit he'd bought me for my promotion. Vice President of Operations at Sterling Desert Resorts. I'd earned it, working 80-hour weeks, sacrificing my marriage, missing holidays, everything for the family business. Richard Sterling, my father, stood at the head of the mahogany table, his silver hair gleaming under the crystal chandelier. Board members flanked him like disciples at the Last Supper. I should have seen it coming. Effective immediately, he announced, not even looking at me, we're restructuring leadership. My son Tyler will assume the role of vice president. Sarah, he finally met my eyes cold as January steel, we're transitioning you to a consultant position, part-time. Part-time. After 15 years of bleeding for this company. Tyler, my younger brother who'd spent the last decade surfing in Bali and burning through trust fund money, smirked from across the table. He'd been back for 6 months, suddenly interested in the family business after his latest startup crashed and burned. Dad? I stood up, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. You can't be serious. I've tripled our revenue. I negotiated the permits for the new expansion. The board has decided. His tone was final, dismissive. Like I was just another employee. This is what's best for the company's future. What he meant was, this is what's best for keeping the Sterling name on a Sterling son. I gathered my papers slowly, deliberately. Every board member avoided my eyes except one. Martin Chen, our CFO who'd mentored me since day one. The pity in his expression almost broke me. You'll receive a generous severance package, Dad added, already moving to the next agenda item. That's when I knew. This wasn't just business, this was personal. This was him telling me that no matter what I achieved, I'd never be the son he wanted. I walked out of that boardroom with my head high, but in the parking garage I sat in my Tesla and screamed until my throat was raw. That's where Dusty found me. My golden retriever mix who always seemed to know when I needed him most. He'd escaped from my office somehow, padding through the parking garage until he found my car. He jumped through the open window and licked the tears I didn't even know were falling. We're done here, boy, I whispered into his fur. We're so done. But here's the thing about being raised by Richard Sterling, he taught me to always play the long game. He just never imagined I'd use those lessons against him. 2 months after my corporate execution, I was hiking in Red Canyon with Dusty when I met Agnes Clearwater. She was 83, sharp as a cactus needle, and owned the last private ranch adjacent to my father's crown jewel, Sterling Desert Paradise. You're Dick Sterling's girl, she said, not a question. She was sitting on a boulder sketching the landscape in charcoal. Used to be, I replied. She studied me with eyes that had seen decades of desert politics. He's been trying to buy my land for 20 years, offers me millions every year like clockwork. Why don't you sell? Agnes smiled, weathered and wise. Because this land has something more valuable than money. Senior water rights dating back to 1887. First claim on the Crystal River aquifer. Your daddy needs my permission to increase his water usage for that fancy expansion he's planning. My pulse quickened. Dad's expansion, the one I'd secured permits for, would double the resort's capacity. But it would need 3 times the water. What would you want for it? I asked carefully. I don't want his money, Agnes said, standing up with surprising agility. But I might sell to someone who understands that water is life out here. Someone who wouldn't just hand it over to the highest bidder. We talked for 3 hours that day. About the desert, about preservation, about legacy. By sunset, we had a handshake deal. I liquidated everything: my portfolio, my condo in Scottsdale, my jewelry, even my engagement ring from my failed marriage. Combined with a strategic loan from Martin Chen, who'd quietly left Dad's company in solidarity, I had just enough. The day I signed the deed, Agnes handed me a thick folder, water rights documentation going back a century. Your father's lawyers have been trying to find a loophole for years. There isn't one. She was right. According to territorial law that preceded statehood, my ranch's water rights were senior to everyone else's in the valley. Any major increase in water usage required my explicit written consent. I texted Dad a photo of me signing the deed with one word, checkmate. He called within 30 seconds. I let it go to voicemail. Dad's expansion started 6 months later. The construction was magnificent. A 200-room addition with a world-class spa, 3 pools and a golf course. Tyler posted pompous updates on LinkedIn about revolutionary desert hospitality and sustainable luxury. Sustainable. I almost choked on my coffee reading that. The problem started slowly. First, the environmental impact report flagged concerns about water usage. Then the State Water Board requested additional documentation. Every request led back to one requirement: written consent from adjacent property owners with senior water rights. Me. Dad sent lawyers first. They arrived at my ranch in black SUVs, sweating through their suits in the desert heat. Dusty growled at them from the porch as I reviewed their offers. $5 million for a simple signature, the lead attorney said. No. $10 million. No, Miss Sterling, you're being unreasonable. I stood up, whistling for Dusty. Gentlemen, unreasonable was cutting me out of a company I helped build. This is just business. They left, but more came. Then came the threats, thinly veiled as concerns. Accidents happen on remote ranches, one particularly slimy lawyer mentioned. That night, I installed security cameras and motion sensors. Dusty started sleeping by my door. Then Tyler showed up, cocaine thin and desperate. The golden boy was cracking under pressure. Sarah, please, Dad's putting everything into this expansion. The investors are getting nervous. Not my problem, Ty. He'll ruin you. He'll find a way. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. Hollow eyes, trembling hands. He already ruined me. Now it's your turn to carry his impossible expectations. How's that working out for you? He left without another word. But that night, something felt wrong. Dusty was restless, pacing and whining. Around midnight, I heard engines in the distance. Through my security cameras, I saw trucks near my well house. They were trying to tap directly into the aquifer, bypassing my land. I called the sheriff, then the State Water Board, then the Environmental Protection Agency. By dawn, the site was crawling with officials. The illegal drilling operation led straight back to Sterling Desert Resorts. The fines alone were $3 million. The PR disaster was priceless. But Dad wasn't done. He never knew when to fold. After the drilling incident, I received a call from someone unexpected. Patricia Reeves, director of the Desert Conservation Alliance. She'd been fighting luxury developments for decades. Miss Sterling, we've been watching your situation with interest. We'd like to propose a partnership. We met at a coffee shop in Sedona. Patricia was everything my father hated. Berkeley-educated environmental lawyer, lesbian and absolutely brilliant. She laid out a vision that made my revenge sweeter. We help you fund water rights enforcement. In return, you commit to conservation easements on your land. Together we can force sustainable development standards on the entire valley. You want to use me to take down my father's resort. I want to use your water rights to save this ecosystem. The fact that it pressures your father is just a bonus. I liked her immediately. The alliance funded a comprehensive environmental study that revealed something Dad's team had hidden: the aquifer was dropping rapidly. At current usage, even without the expansion, the valley had maybe 10 years of water left. We released the report to the media the same week Dad was supposed to close his investor funding. The headline read, "Sterling Resort Expansion Threatens Valley's Water Future." Stock prices tumbled. Investors pulled out. But the real blow came when we revealed aerial footage of the desert around Sterling Resort. Dead Joshua trees, dried creek beds and wildlife forced to migrate. All while the resort's 3 pools sparkled full and its golf course gleamed impossibly green. The contrast was damning. Dad called me that night. First time in 8 months. "You vindictive little bitch," he snarled. "You're destroying everything I built." "No, Dad. I'm just showing everyone what you built it on. Scarcity, taking more than your share and calling it success. This is about the board position, I'll give it back. VP, full restoration. It's not about the position anymore." "Then what? What do you want?" I looked at Dusty, curled at my feet, and thought about Agnes Clearwater's words about legacy. I want you to remember that you created me. Every lesson you taught about being ruthless, about winning at any cost. I learned them all, I just learned them better than Tyler. He hung up, but I knew this wasn't over. The next morning, Dusty was gone. I'd let Dusty out for his morning run like always. He never went far, just around the ranch perimeter. But by noon he hadn't returned. By evening I was panicked. I searched everywhere, calling his name until my voice was hoarse. Nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. Dusty had been my constant companion through the divorce, the job loss, everything. He was family. Real family. The next morning, I found paw prints by the fence line, and tire tracks. Someone had taken him. I was loading my rifle when my phone rang. Unknown number. Missing something. Tyler's voice, but different. Harder. Tyler, what did you do? Dad says you need motivation to be reasonable. The dog's fine, for now. If you hurt him, sign over water access rights. Simple. I hung up and called Patricia. Within an hour we had a plan. See, what Dad and Tyler didn't know was that Dusty was microchipped with GPS. The signal showed he was at the resort's maintenance building. Patricia filed an emergency injunction for criminal theft and kidnapping of a registered emotional support animal. Yes, that's a federal crime when crossing state lines, which technically the resort did by 200 feet. But I didn't wait for legal channels. That night, I cut through the resort's fence with bolt cutters. The maintenance building was poorly guarded. Dad never thought I'd come myself. I found Dusty locked in a storage room, traumatized but unharmed. But I found something else too, boxes of documents that shouldn't have been there. Financial records, environmental reports, and most damning, correspondence with state officials about bribing for water allocations. I took photos of everything before security arrived. They detained me, of course. Dad showed up within minutes, Tyler trailing behind like a beaten dog. Breaking and entering Sarah, that's beneath you. Kidnapping animals, that's beneath you. Or it should be. The sheriff arrived, Patricia with him. She had the federal warrant. As they reviewed security footage, it clearly showed Tyler taking Dusty. But the real surprise came when they searched the room and found the documents I'd photographed. The FBI was interested in those. Tyler was arrested. Dad's face went from angry to ashen as federal agents seized box after box of evidence. But as they led Tyler away, Dad grabbed my arm. You did this. You destroyed your own brother. No, Dad, you did this. You taught us that family was conditional on success. That love had to be earned through profit margins. Tyler was just following your playbook. He's weak. You were always stronger. That's why you feared me. For the first time in my life, Richard Sterling had no response. The federal investigation triggered an avalanche. The resort's contracts were frozen. Construction halted. Staff started quitting. The media smelled blood in the water, and they circled like sharks. Sterling empire built on bribes, water wars, how one resort drained a desert. The fall of Richard Sterling. I watched from my ranch, Dusty recovered and always by my side. Patricia kept me updated on the legal proceedings. The conservation groups were pushing for federal oversight of all water usage in the valley. Then Martin Chen called with inside information. Dad was broke. Everything was leveraged against the expansion. Without it, he'd lose the original resort too. He's looking for a buyer, Martin said, quietly. Sarah, you could take everything. I don't want everything. I want something better. That's when I developed my final play. I called Patricia and outlined a radical proposal. She loved it. We approached the tribal council of the local Native American nation, whose ancestors had been forced off this land a century ago. We proposed a joint conservancy. They would co-manage water rights with strict conservation standards. Any development would require both tribal approval and environmental sustainability guarantees. But to make it work, we needed Dad's resort to agree to massive reductions. We needed him desperate. 3 days later he was. Tyler had flipped, testifying about Dad's decades of bribery and corruption in exchange for a plea deal. Federal agents raided the resort. Dad's remaining investors fled. He had 48 hours before bankruptcy. That's when he came to my ranch. No lawyers, no Tyler, just him in his Bentley, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Dusty growled when he approached. I didn't call him off. Sarah, his voice was hollow. You win. This was never about winning, Dad. Then what? What was it about? I thought about all the years of trying to earn his approval. All the times he'd chosen Tyler's potential over my proven success. All the moments he'd reminded me I was just a daughter, not a son. It was about showing you that the things you value most, money and power, are just illusions. Water is real. Land is real. The damage you do to both is real. I need your help. Those words cost him everything. Richard Sterling had never asked for help in his life. I'm listening. We sat on my porch, the desert sunset painting everything gold and red. Dusty lay between us, a furry barrier of distrust. The federal charges, Dad started, hands shaking slightly. They'll take everything. The resort, the house, the accounts, your mother's jewelry, even her burial plot. Mom, he rarely mentioned her. She died when I was 15. Tyler was 10. Cancer took her body, but Dad's coldness had taken her spirit long before. She loved that resort, he continued. It was her dream originally, you know. A place where people could heal in the desert. Don't you dare use Mom to manipulate me. I'm not. I'm trying to explain. After she died, I poured everything into making it bigger, better. I thought if I made it successful enough, it would mean something. Mean she hadn't died for nothing. She died because of cancer, Dad, not for a resort. I know that now. We sat in silence. The desert does that, makes you comfortable with quiet. What do you want? I finally asked. A deal. You have influence with the conservation groups, the tribal council. I'll downsize the resort to a quarter of its current size. Sustainable operations only. The rest of the land goes to conservation. But I need to keep something, Sarah, some piece of what your mother and I built. And if I refuse, then the feds take it all. It becomes a seized asset, probably sold to a casino corporation. Everything gets paved over. He was right. I'd checked. The likely buyer was a Vegas conglomerate with zero environmental standards. I have conditions, I said. Of course you do. First, you publicly acknowledge the environmental damage and fund restoration for the next decade. Second, the tribal council gets permanent seats on the board. Third, water usage drops by 70%, effective immediately. That's impossible. You'll make it work. You're Richard Sterling. He actually laughed, bitter and short. Fourth, you tell the truth, publicly, about why you pushed me out, about choosing Tyler because he was male, about every sexist, discriminatory decision that led to this moment. His face went red. That would destroy my reputation completely. Your reputation is already destroyed. This is about accountability. And if I agree to all this, then I sign over limited water access. Enough for a small sustainable resort. Maybe 50 rooms. A place people could actually heal, like Mom wanted. He stood up, walked to the porch railing. The man who'd built an empire was considering controlled demolition. There's one more thing, I said. Tyler gets help. Real rehab, not the country club kind. And when he's clean, he works the resort's organic garden. Ground level. Literally. You want to humiliate him. I want to save him from becoming you. That hit harder than any lawsuit could. Dad turned to face me. You really hate me that much? I don't hate you, Dad. That's the tragedy. I loved you so much that your rejection nearly killed me. But it didn't. It transformed me into someone strong enough to hold you accountable. He extended his hand. Deal. I shook it, feeling the calluses he'd earned building his first hotel by hand. Before the corruption. Before the greed. Sarah, he said, as he walked to his car. Your mother would be proud of you. I'm not sure she'd say the same about me. It was the closest to an apology I'd ever get. 6 months later, I stood with Patricia, Martin, and surprisingly, Agnes Clearwater, who'd driven out to see what her land sale had accomplished. Below us, construction crews were demolishing 3/4 of Sterling Desert Resort. But this wasn't destruction, it was resurrection. Where pools had been, native plants were returning. The golf course was being converted to protected habitat. And most miraculously, the Crystal River, dry for 15 years, was beginning to flow again. Will you look at that? Agnes whispered, tears in her eyes. The river remembers its path. The new Sterling Healing Center was modest but beautiful. 50 rooms built with sustainable materials, solar panels and rainwater collection systems. A board consisting of Dad, 2 tribal council members, Patricia and me. Yes, me, Dad had insisted, and the board agreed. You understand both sides, Patricia had said. The business and the land. Tyler was there too. 90 days clean, planting mesquite trees with a youth group from the reservation. He'd lost the cocky smirk and found something like humility. We weren't close, might never be, but we were trying. Dad's public confession had made national news. Billionaire admits to decades of sexist leadership. The old boys club abandoned him completely. But something strange happened. A new generation of conscious investors reached out, interested in the revolutionary model of resort conservation partnership. We're actually profitable, Martin told me, reviewing the first quarter numbers. Smaller scale but sustainable. Your mother would have loved this. That afternoon, I found Dad sitting by the newly flowing river, looking older but somehow more at peace. I've been thinking about your mother, he said as I sat beside him. Dusty immediately positioning himself between us. Old habits, yeah? She used to say water always finds its level. I thought she meant it about business, about competition. But she meant it about truth, didn't she? Everything eventually flows to where it's supposed to be. Even us. He looked at me, really saw me for perhaps the first time. Especially us. I'm sorry, Sarah, for all of it. For choosing your brother because of his gender. For teaching you that love was conditional. For being the kind of father who made his daughter feel she had to destroy him just to be seen. I'd waited my whole life for those words. They didn't heal everything, but they started something. I'm sorry too, I said. For the methods. For Tyler getting caught in the crossfire. Don't be. You did what I taught you to do. You just did it better. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow. Dusty eventually relaxed, even letting Dad pet him. What now? Dad asked. Now we rebuild. Differently. Better. Together? I thought about it. Parallel. Same direction, but each on our own path. He nodded. That's fair. As the sun set, painting the desert in shades of gold and purple, I realized something. I'd set out to destroy my father's empire, but instead I'd saved us both. The water rights that were meant to be weapons became tools of restoration. The revenge I'd planned so carefully had transformed into something else entirely. Redemption. But here's the thing about redemption. It's not a destination. It's a river that keeps flowing, always finding new paths, always seeking level ground. Dusty barked at a rabbit, breaking the moment. Dad laughed, genuine and surprised. I hadn't heard that sound since Mom was alive. So, he said, standing up and brushing dust off his jeans. Designer jeans. He was actually getting dirty. Board meeting tomorrow. We're discussing the youth internship program with the reservation. I'll be there. Good. We need someone who understands both the business and the land. He walked away, slower than the man who'd once strode through boardrooms like he owned the world. But maybe that's what real strength looked like, knowing when to yield. I stayed by the river with Dusty until stars filled the desert sky. The water murmured over rocks that had been dry for decades, finding its ancient path home. Mom was right. Water always finds its level. And sometimes so do we. If you're still watching, you're probably wondering, was it worth it? The nuclear war with my own father? Here's what I know. 3 years ago, I walked out of that boardroom worthless in my father's eyes. Today, the valley has water for generations. The tribal nation has a voice in development. Tyler is 2 years clean, and actually good at sustainable agriculture. Who knew? And Dad? He teaches a business ethics course at the state university now. The irony isn't lost on anyone, but his students love him. He tells them about his failures, his corruption, and the daughter who brought him down to build something better. He uses me as a case study in stakeholder justice. We have dinner once a month. It's awkward, but we're trying. The ranch Agnes sold me. It's a teaching center now for water conservation. School kids come to learn about aquifers and ecosystems. Dusty is basically their mascot, though he's getting gray around the muzzle. But here's the real plot twist. Last week Dad called with news. His doctor found something on a scan. Aggressive, maybe 6 months. I need you to take over the healing center, he said. Not Tyler. You was always supposed to be you. This time I didn't have to fight for it. This time he chose me first. Some might say I won. Others might say we both lost too much to call it victory. But I think Mom would say something different. Water doesn't win or lose. It just flows where it needs to go, carving canyons and nurturing gardens along the way. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it carries you home. So tell me in the comments, was I justified? Did I go too far? Or not far enough? And what would you have done with those water rights? Drop a if you think revenge can lead to redemption. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories about the prices we pay for power, and the cost of getting it back. This is Sarah Sterling, signing off from the desert, where the river runs again. And remember, the most powerful force isn't money or family legacy, it's water. It always finds a way. If this story made you feel anything, drop a fire emoji in the comments. Was I right to protect the land, even if it meant destroying my own father's empire? Hit that like button, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe for more real emotional revenge storytelling. Trust me, it only gets deeper from here.